Conflict. The long-standing conflict between the two nations erupted into a full-scale war. Diplomats worked tirelessly to resolve the conflict peacefully through negotiations. Combat. Soldiers were trained rigorously for combat, preparing for the harsh realities of war. The intense combat in the dense jungle tested the resilience of the military units. Tactics. The general employed innovative tactics to outmaneuver the opposing forces. Studying historical battles provided valuable insights into effective military tactics. Casualty. The field hospital was overwhelmed with casualties from the fierce battle. The war memorial honored the sacrifices of the countless casualties. Alliance. Forming a strategic alliance bolstered the nation's collective defense against external threats. The alliance crumbled as internal disagreements weakened the unified front. Aggression. The sudden aggression caught the international community off guard. Diplomacy aimed to de-escalate the aggression and prevent further conflict. Armament. Rapid advances in armament technology reshaped the balance of power. The nation invested heavily in the development of cutting-edge armament. Mobilization. The country's rapid mobilization surprised its adversaries and demonstrated readiness. Mobilization efforts strained the economy as resources were redirected to the war. Espionage. Spies operated covertly, gathering critical intelligence behind enemy lines. The espionage network successfully intercepted enemy communications. Siege. The city endured a prolonged siege, testing the resilience of its defenders. Supplies dwindled rapidly within the city walls during the enemy's siege. Retreat. Faced with overwhelming opposition, the decision was made to initiate a tactical retreat. The commander ordered a strategic retreat to regroup and reassess the situation. Atrocity. The international community condemned the war crimes and atrocities committed during the conflict. Witnesses testified about the shocking atrocities witnessed in the war zone. Diplomacy. Skilled diplomats engaged in shuttle diplomacy to facilitate peace talks. The success of diplomacy prevented the escalation of hostilities. Frontline. Soldiers on the front line displayed immense courage in the face of constant danger. Correspondents risked their lives to report from the front line of the conflict. Collateral damage. Civilian infrastructure suffered significant collateral damage during precision airstrikes. The high civilian casualties were an unfortunate consequence of the collateral damage. Warfare. The evolution of modern warfare necessitated constant adaptation to new technologies. Historical records provided insights into the strategies employed in ancient warfare. Neutrality. The nation declared its neutrality, avoiding direct involvement in the regional conflict. Maintaining neutrality allowed the country to act as a mediator in diplomatic efforts. Rations. Soldiers relied on meager rations as supply lines were disrupted during the siege. The distribution of food rations became a logistical challenge in the war zone. Conscription. Conscription was implemented to bolster the size of the military during the wartime draft. Public resistance against conscription sparked anti-war protests in the capital. Deployment. Strategic troop deployment secured key positions along the front lines. The timely deployment of reinforcements turned the tide of the battle. Reconnaissance. Successful reconnaissance missions provided crucial intelligence for the upcoming offensive. The failure of reconnaissance led to strategic miscalculations on the battlefield. No-fly zone. Establishing a no-fly zone restricted enemy aircraft from entering the airspace. The enforcement of a no-fly zone prevented aerial attacks on civilian populations. Invasion. The enemy's invasion met fierce resistance from the local population. History recounts the consequences of failed invasions throughout the centuries. Ceasefire. A temporary ceasefire allowed for humanitarian aid to reach war-torn areas. Negotiations during the ceasefire aimed to find a lasting resolution to the conflict. War crimes. The international community condemned leaders responsible for war crimes. Tribunals sought justice for victims of heinous war crimes. Bunker. Soldiers sought refuge in underground bunkers during intense bombing raids. Bunker construction became a priority in defensive preparations. Partisan. Partisan groups engaged in guerrilla warfare, disrupting enemy supply lines. The local population formed partisan militias to resist occupation forces. Crisis. The diplomatic crisis escalated into a full-blown international conflict. Crisis management became a key focus for leaders navigating wartime challenges. Nuclear deterrence. The possession of nuclear weapons served as a powerful deterrent. The doctrine of nuclear deterrence aimed to prevent major conflicts between superpowers. Wartime economy. The wartime economy shifted focus to the production of military supplies. Economic restructuring post-war presented challenges in transitioning from a wartime to peacetime economy. Sabotage. Covert operations aimed at sabotage weakened the enemy's infrastructure. Sabotage by resistance groups played a crucial role in asymmetric warfare. Genocide. The conflict tragically led to the genocide of a vulnerable ethnic group. International intervention aimed to prevent further acts of genocide. Mediation. International mediation facilitated peace talks between warring factions. Skilled diplomats engaged in mediation to bridge the gap between conflicting parties. War of attrition. The prolonged war became a war of attrition, exhausting both sides. Strategies focused on wearing down the enemy through attrition. Displacement. War-induced displacement forced thousands to flee their homes. Refugee camps provided temporary shelter for those displaced by the conflict. Triumph. The decisive victory on the battlefield marked a significant triumph. Triumphs in battle boosted morale and rallied support for the war effort. Pacifism. Advocates of pacifism protested against the government's decision to go to war. Pacifist movements gained momentum as war weariness spread. Concentration camp. The discovery of concentration camps shocked the world, revealing war crimes. Concentration camps became symbols of the atrocities committed during the war. War powers. The government expanded its war powers to address the growing threat. Balancing war powers with civil liberties became a contentious issue during wartime. Prisoner of war. The captured soldiers were treated as prisoners of war under international law. Conditions in prisoner of war camps varied widely depending on the conflict. Guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare tactics proved effective against larger, conventional forces. The success of guerrilla warfare often relied on local support and knowledge. Peacekeeping. International peacekeeping missions aimed to restore stability in conflict zones. Peacekeeping forces played a crucial role in post-conflict reconstruction. Treaty. The signing of the treaty officially ended hostilities between the two nations. Treaty negotiations included terms for reparations and post-war cooperation. MIA, missing in action. Families anxiously awaited news of their loved ones listed as MIA. The search for MIAs continued long after the official end of the war. Reparation. Post-war negotiations included demands for reparations to rebuild the country. Providing reparations aimed to address the economic consequences of war. Proxy war. The conflict was essentially a proxy war, with nations supporting opposing factions. Proxy wars often exacerbated regional tensions, leading to prolonged conflicts. Chemical warfare. The use of chemical weapons in warfare violated international conventions. The devastating impact of chemical warfare led to global efforts to ban such weapons. Unrest. Civil unrest escalated into a full-blown rebellion, sparking the war. Addressing social and economic unrest became a priority in post-war reconstruction. Retaliation. The military launched a retaliatory strike in response to the enemy's aggression. Retaliatory measures aimed to deter further hostile actions. Veteran. Veterans shared their wartime experiences, highlighting the challenges of returning to civilian life. Honoring veterans became a national tradition to recognize their service and sacrifice.